Hey there everybody, Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our questions and answers show. Today is Sunday, April the 7th. Wow, 1 week into April already. Spring is here. Warmer weather, sunshine, great music, right? At least we hope great music. So anyway, over the last week, I've been taking your questions for the last questions and answers episode, and I'll get to as many of them as I can today. A little bit of housekeeping. So of course, if you don't hear me ask or answer your question, that means either it has been asked and answered before in previous episodes, or it's possibly a question that really has nothing to do with anything we cover on this show. We're starting to get a lot of that, although I try to answer those as well. But with just so many questions being asked, I have to draw a line somewhere. So also, want a little bit of kind of a reminder here. Try and with the questions you're asking, I'm getting probably half of the questions lately, the last couple of weeks, are, Pete, can you do this show? Pete, can you do a show about this? Pete, can you do a show about that? Can we try and steer away from that? As you guys have heard in my recent announcement episode, I've got a list of show topics to cover that probably will take me a year or two. And some of you guys are getting really, really granular with things that you'd like to see covered on the show. I can't do everything, obviously, and while I love suggestions, they're great. I'm finding that half of these the questions that come up for these questions and answer shows are just suggestions on shows you guys want to see on your favorite albums or your favorite bands or artists or genres or history of and all that kind of stuff. So try and keep these questions a little bit more kind of music related, not just about shows you want me to cover, because again, if you fill me up with so many suggestions, I'm never going to get to any of this stuff. So and again, as far as the genres of questions you're asking, I understand a lot of people like a lot of different genres that may fall out of the line of what I normally cover on this channel. Okay, so and I get that, I appreciate that, and I also like stuff that doesn't have to do with heavy metal and hard rock and progressive rock, jazz fusion. I like blues and some old time jazz, and I like a lot of pop stuff and what have you. Let's try and keep some of the questions to the genres that we really specialize in here. Okay, it'll just kind of keep this flowing along a little faster, and it'll lessen the prep time that I need to get ready for these shows, because I just want to make sure everybody realizes to do one of these questions and answers shows, it's like an hour or an hour plus usually to record it, and it's anywhere from 2 to 4 to 5 hours of prep time to go through all the questions. A lot of times people are asking me questions about really obscure stuff that you want me to go and listen to and give an opinion on. It takes a lot of time to do that, right? So, and I don't have all that time, always. So, the more I'm getting these kind of questions that are going to take me forever to go, listen to bands and give an opinion on, it's taking a lot of time, and I'm going to get to the point where I'm just not going to have the time to do the show anymore. And I would hate to do that, because I know a lot of you love this show. All right, and so far, I do enjoy doing it, but let's try and keep things as focused as possible here. Also, a lot of you are asking 2, 3, 4, 5 questions each week. Please try and keep it to 1 or 2 maximum, okay? Because what I'm going to start doing, I'm just going to start, not tackling a lot of the questions, because we want to have everybody get a chance here, okay? So with that being said, let's get right to it. So our first question from David M. Pete, great show as always. What is your take on Jam Carré? I love them, he says. And Boddeun. That's B as in boy, O-U-D-D-E-U-N. I'm going to answer that first. He's got 2 questions here. As far as Jam Carré goes, great band. Been kind of following them for a long time. The folks in that band have been working with Sea and Tranquility, going back into the 90s. And really interesting group there. They play this kind of retro, psychedelic, prog, jazz fusion-y, hard rock type of hybrid, mostly instrumental. Some really great analog keyboard sounds and tasty guitar work. A band that's really hard to pigeonhole and categorize. They're not very prolific, they come out with, albums out of the blue here and there. They're all really good. I know they have a nice little loyal following, and we've been very, very good with them over the years, covering a lot of their albums. And like I said, really nice guys, and I like the band. Boddeun, great band that God hasn't, I think, I'm 100% positive they're broken up, because I haven't released anything in 20 years. But I have all 3 of their studio albums. I believe I have their live album as well. Really good instrumental music, kind of proggy, kind of fusion-y. If you like the Dregs, Dixie Dregs, and Mahavishnu Orchestra, maybe Gamelan, you'll love Boddeun. Really good, tasty guitar work and nice violin, complex tunes, very melodic. Really, really good band. That's a great question because, God, I hadn't thought about that band in a long time, and it makes me want to go pull out their CDs out of my collection. From Icaro Borges, hey Pete, could you talk about some albums you like from genres you don't? I was having a conversation on this topic with a friend recently. I think it could be a good topic for a video or something. Well, if it's genres I really don't like at all, I can't say that I really would like any albums in them. I think this is kind of an easy question. So in other words, rap. I hate rap. I hate hip-hop. And I can honestly say I don't give two craps about any album from any artist in either of those genres. So, kind of an easy question. You know, I mean, there are genres that I'm maybe not nuts about, but I do, you know, like some albums or artists. But as far as like a genre that I just do not like at all, you know, like country, for example, is, you know, I'm not a huge country fan. I don't dislike it. Okay. I like some artists here and there and some albums here and there by specific artists. But like I said, that's not a genre I don't like. I don't follow it like some of the other genres I obviously love. But like, yeah, rap or hip hop or, there's not a lot of genres I really don't like. Those are two of them right there. I'm not a big dance music guy either. So, I mean, yeah, I get your question, but, again, I think we're trying to talk about genres that you really don't like, and there might be an album or two that you can appreciate. I just named two genres I don't like, and there ain't nothing I can appreciate in them at all, so sorry. From CBH440, hey Pete, heading out to see Red Dragon Cartel tonight. Ever consider a top 10 Badlands songs or a Jakey Lee songs show? I mean, I could do a top 10 Badlands. I love Badlands. Not a lot of material there, right? You know, 2 official albums, 1 album never released but available. Yeah, I mean, I could. You know, I'm not going to do. I've actually gotten a bunch of questions today on people wanting like to do like artist retrospective or top songs by a specific, you know, or musician, I should say, who appeared in a bunch of different bands. I'm not going to do those because then that's just getting a little kind of crazy. All right, most of the top 10 song things I'm going to do, or best to worst albums, or all that kind of stuff, will be very focused on a particular band or group or artist, not a guy who appeared in like 5 or 10 different groups and whatever my favorites are. I'm not going to go that far into the weeds, right? As far as doing a top 10 Badlands songs, I mean, I could. Again, we're not talking about a lot of material there, you know. 2 official albums, so what's that, 20 songs? I don't really know if it's worth doing, other than the fact that I love Badlands, and I think they were a great band, and I wish they would have gone on longer. Could I do a top 10 songs from the 3 albums I own? Yeah, I guess I probably could. But Jakey Lee, great guitar player. All right. From Vinyl Rec, okay, Pete, I hope this hasn't been asked before, but would love to see a Baby's top 10. The April Wine and Max Webster top 10s were killer. I wouldn't mind seeing a Crocus top 10 as well. Keep up the good work. You know, I only own a Baby's, like, retrospective hits collection, whatever the hell you want to call it. So I'm probably not the guy to do a Baby's top 10, other than just name my favorite 10 songs from that, right? I don't have any of the Baby's albums, so probably not the right guy to do that. As far as Crocus, I'm not a huge Crocus fan. You know, I like the Headhunter album and maybe one other. I don't own any Crocus anymore. I was never that big of a fan, so I'm probably not the right guy to do either of those. From allmediareviews.blogspot.com, any plans among your extensive list to make either a top 10 songs or history of Pain of Salvation? I don't have them on my list. You know, I possibly could do it. I mean, I have all the Pain of Salvation albums. I like them quite a bit. You know, possibly. Also, another question, and I suppose to add to that, you mentioned doing a Nearfest review show. Did you attend Prog Power USA or even Power Mad, which predated it? I would love to hear stories from that festival, as well as I attended a handful of those, as well as Nearfest. No, I had not gone to any Prog Power or Power Mads, unfortunately. You know, I'm from New York, and it just gets expensive to be traveling down to Atlanta. I considered it numerous times, but, you know, flights down there, hotel, tickets, food, I mean, you know, you're talking potentially $1,000 weekend. So, no, never went to Prog Power USA. Would have liked to, though. As far as Nearfest, it's not so much going to be a review show. It's going to be just kind of like a recollections type of thing. bands, fun stuff that me and my friends did, and just kind of like a little kind of summary of what those Nearfest years meant to me and some of the good times and good music, good bands, good people I met, and all that kind of stuff. That's what that's going to be. And I hope to get to that soon. It probably would make sense to have one of my buddies who went with me. There were a bunch of us that went every year. But anyway, it's something I need to think about how I'm going to kind of present it, because it would be great. I would love to do it. I could do it on my own, obviously, because I was there. But it might be fun to bring someone on the show who was there with me, and we can kind of reminisce a little bit. So that's something I have to figure out. Like I said, it's on my list to do, and we'll just see how that unfolds. From BM Bolt, thanks for the beer response. I'm also favoring the juicy IPAs these days. A few questions in case some have been asked before. How do you like Tony Carey's solo and Planet P albums? Well, I've already answered that a couple weeks ago. Decent. Not stuff that's going to shake the world or anything like that, but the Planet P albums were kind of fun for what they are. What about Hughes Thrall? I like the Hughes Thrall album. Little on the mellow side. It's kind of poppy. I would have liked it to be a little more rockin', but I think that the songs are great. And, Pat Thrall is always a great guitar player, and Hughes sounds awesome on it. I don't know. I guess I really like the album. I kind of expected a little more from it. And obviously they didn't do any more, but I do like it. Last part of his question, who are some of your favorite Shrapnel Records guitarists? A lot of those are guilty pleasures of mine. I wouldn't say guilty pleasures. Some of that stuff was great, especially the first cut. Just think about how many really cool instrumental guitar shred albums came out on Shrapnel within the span of 2-3 years tops. That was like the glory years of it, right? So you had, Vinnie Moore, that Vinnie Moore Mind's Eye. Is that what that was called? I think so. I forget the titles of some of these albums, but that was Vinnie Moore's first solo album on Shrapnel is awesome. Those first two Tony McAlpines are great. You had Marty Friedman and Jason Becker, doing their thing, the cacophony thing. David Chastain, I was a big David Chastain fan back in the day. Although he didn't do a ton of albums on Shrapnel. I think he did maybe 2, if I'm not mistaken. And then he did a bunch on another label. You had the Chastain band, he had the CJSS band. Great stuff. Joey Tafola did a really great album. Paul Gilbert, with his Racer X stuff. Some good stuff there, and that was... the Shrapnel era, it's like a snapshot in time. I think that style of guitar playing had a shelf life. Yngwie obviously started that whole thing for the most part. There were other guys before him, yes I know, Uli John Roth and Al Di Meola, who were playing a similar style, but it was Yngwie, the guy who kind of brought it into kind of like that 80s metal realm, and then you had all these other guitar players following in his wake. But, again, a shelf life of that kind of stuff, and then they all had to kind of move on to other things. From Ian O'Rourke, great job, Mr. P. How about a show spotlighting some of the bands and material from the late 80s and into early, mid-90s by some of the hard rock and metal, even progressive bands that were fighting the good fight? We're trying to forge the next wave of music we all love. I think it's overlooked as a period sometimes due to lack of exposure and questionable production, etc. I'm trying to get a grip on what you're asking here. So, all right, my interpretation of your question, Ian, or Ian, however you say your name. The 90s, early and mid-90s, you had the rise of grunge / alternative, the Seattle scene, whatever the hell you want to call it, and then nu metal and all that kind of stuff, which I think kind of pushed a lot of the bands from the late 70s and the 80s who were doing hard rock and metal and prog into, we got to conform, right? We got to do grungy type stuff, or we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do nu metal, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there were some bands who were fighting that fight. Not a lot. I'm thinking Dream Theater, right? Pantera tried to stay the course. You had bands like Ekelin and Spock's Beard and the Flower Kings and Glass Hammer who were trying to say, hey, we're not going to go down that route. We're going to take that, 70s and early 80s, prog and kind of continue on. So, yeah, I guess I could do a show, something like that, if that's what you're getting at, bands who kind of kept doing what they're doing without, doing like the Queensryche thing, who just all of a sudden went and tried to do, grungy type stuff, or Dokken. And a lot of bands just kind of tried to assimilate with the Seattle bands, and it just didn't work, right? Didn't fucking work at all. So from, next one, from Amadeo Eichberg. All right. Evenly matched albums battle royal. Dio, Holy Diver versus Last in Line. Sorry, Holy Diver wins every time in my book, although I like Last in Line a lot. Rush, 2112 versus Hemispheres. Sorry, I'm a Hemispheres guy. Ozzy, Blizzard versus Diary. Diary wins every time for me. Pick your preference, no ties allowed. Thanks, Pete. Rock on. See, that was easy. From Mr. Time Lord 1. What are your favorite death metal bands? All right, so Death, the band Death. Early Opeth. Let's see, Opeth has like a bunch of different periods, and I think they were one of the best. They're early, probably up until, trying to think, probably till Ghost Reveries. They were still a really great death metal band with lots of progressive tendencies. And then they started morphing more towards a prog and hard rock band. They had a little bit of the death metal carried over for a couple albums, and it just kind of stopped. And now they're basically just like a 70s style hard rock, prog, folk, psych band, which I'm totally into as well. But the early stuff, prime death metal. Nile has always been one of my favorite death metal bands. I absolutely love Nile. Immolation. I tend to favor the more technical death metal bands. Gorguts, Atheist, all that old Morbid Angel stuff. Dark Tranquility, more of like a melodic death metal band. Arch Enemy, especially the earlier stuff. A lot of great death metal bands out there. Also from Mr. Time Lord 1, since you said you don't like grindcore, how do you feel about Napalm Death's more death metal albums like Harmony Corruption? I'm just not into Napalm Death at all. Sorry, I've tried. You can't like every band. And there's just certain bands that and I don't dislike Napalm Death. It's just not my thing, right? I just don't listen to them. I can appreciate them for what they've done for the scene over the years. I know a lot of people love them. They just have never done anything for me. And lastly, how do you feel about Virgin Steel? I've heard a bunch of Virgin Steel records over the year. Good, solid band. Nothing groundbreaking by any means, but they've always been a pretty solid band, and they just never rose above like the level that they're at least especially not here. I thought maybe in the 80s that Virgin Steel would kind of really catch on, but they never really did here. But good band, solid, kind of, probably like a lower echelon kind of Manowar type of thing, right? It's kind of how I always looked at them. From Sydney Pasquarelli, hey Pete, which is your favorite progressive rock album? Take care, great work. I mean, my answer could change any given day of the week. Today, I'm going to say Yes, Close to the Edge. Probably for me is like the greatest prog album of all time. But tomorrow, I might say Genesis Foxtrot, right? Which I absolutely love as well. On another day, I might say In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson. So today, I'm going to say Yes, Close to the Edge. But any of those three probably sit above all others. But there's so many of them, right? There's just so many of them. From Mark Williams, hey Pete, great show as always. What's your opinion on the Derek Sherinian and Greg Howe solo albums? Well, let's tackle. I'm assuming you're talking about all their separates. I know these guys have done some work together, but I'm assuming you're talking about them separately. I like a lot of those Derek Sherinian solo albums. I've always really liked Derek Sherinian a lot as a player and as a writer, and I've said it before. I'll say it again. As much as I love Jordan Rudess, I think he's a really talented musician and player. I always thought Derek fit a little better in Dream Theater. Just my personal opinion. Okay. But Derek has put out a ton of great solo albums. That cat knows progressive fusion, man. And he injects a little metal into it, Love his stuff. He's had all sorts of great players on his albums. He, of course, did the Planet X stuff, which is killer, So I'm a big Sherinian fan. I really like him a lot. I'm not really that up on Greg Howe solo stuff. Again, can't listen to everybody. There's so many guitar players out there and stuff. So I think I've heard the first 2 Greg Howe solo albums going back a ways, but I really haven't listened to any of his stuff in a long time. I know a lot of people really talk very highly about him, and as a player, he's awesome. I just have not been collecting his solo stuff, and I've only heard some stuff here and there. Okay, so also, what's your take on the 4 Aldo Nova albums? I don't know if I've heard the 4th. I think the first one is great. I like the second one a lot. The third one's okay. I don't think I've ever heard the 4th one, but I always liked Aldo Nova. Solid guy, solid player, good singer, good songwriter. I really thought he was going to be a lot bigger than he was. I think he was just right on the verge, and then it just kind of didn't happen. But from John Bernard, hey Pete, another great job. How about a top 10 of REO Speedwagon, or a history of, or a best to worst albums list, or even a deep cuts? Never hear you speak of them. I take it, John, you're a big fan. Um, well, as far as a best to worst album list, I don't think I could do that because I don't own all their albums. I think the last album I have by them is High Infidelity. I have everything kind of leading up to that. As far as the deep cuts, I'm not doing the deep cuts show anymore. Well, I enjoy doing it, but nobody watches them, so that's the way it goes. As far as the top 10 songs that I might be able to do, or a history of, I don't know if I'd want to do a history of REO. Top 10 songs, possibly. We'll see. I don't know. You're the only person who's ever asked for that. I like them. I really love the early REO Speedwagon stuff. I think that those 70s albums are really, really strong. And I think, most people only think of, REO Speedwagon as Keep On Loving You and, one or two other tunes. And, man, they're missing out because there's some great shit early on, those early albums. Really good band. And they're really good live, too. I've seen them live a couple times. In fact, I saw them. They were the second band I ever saw live, believe it or not. Madison Square Garden, 1981, with the Rockets. They were awesome. Both bands were great. That was a memorable show. From Earl Joy. Pete, have you heard of the British band The Open Mind? Very underrated and underappreciated in my opinion. Yeah, pretty solid band, man. Good bluesy, like psychedelic rock from the late 60s. I kind of dig them. Kind of garagey sounding, you don't hear them mentioned much at all. Pretty cool band, though. From Gene Kirsten. How about a show about your top 10 guitar players? Let's see if we can... Yeah, I could do that. I could probably do it right now. Let's see. Let's see if I can do it right now. Blackmore. Tony Iommi. So Richie Blackmore, Tony Iommi, Gary Moore, Michael Schenker, Steve Morse, Uli John Roth, Hendrix, Frank Marino. How many am I up to? You guys counting? All right, I'm just going to rattle off a couple more. I lost my train of thought. Al Di Meola. Got to be up there. I know I'm missing some guys here. This is killing me. Oh, Robin Trower. Did I mention Trower already? Okay. All right, so let's go back. Blackmore, Iommi, Moore, Schenker, Trower, Marino, Hendrix, Di Meola, Roth. Who else could we just throw in there? Oh, I think I said Steve Morse, right? Steve Morse. Did I not say Steve Morse? Alex Lifeson, too, is up there pretty high. I may do a full show on that because it'd be nice to kind of talk about it a little bit more. But that's some of the guys, like right off the top of my head, that are up there pretty high. I know there's more. Terry Kath, obviously. Yeah, I could do a whole show just talking about guitar players. So, great question. I'm going to add that to my to-do list. Thanks, Gene. From Stevie is Steve, something like that. So you like Jeff Scott Soto as a singer. Do you own any of his other projects? If so, which ones? And also, have you ever heard of or liked the metal band XYZ? You know what? I had that very first XYZ album, like on LP back in the day. I haven't heard that or anything else by them in eons. But I always thought that was a pretty good album, the first one. As far as Jeff Scott Soto, I don't own a ton. I have I have the Soul Circus album on CD. I have a couple that he did with Axl Rudy Pell. I think I have one of the Talisman albums on CD. I may or may not have a Wet album, W-E-T. I know I've heard a bunch of them. I may or may not own any of them. And I have the Sons of Apollo, which I absolutely love. It's my favorite album of 2018? What year did that come out? Was that last year? Yeah, it was last year. Can't wait for the next one. From Brent Rush. Any chance of a top 10 from Kevin Gilbert? May he rest in peace. I don't own any Kevin Gilbert, I think, other than I may have one. I think I have a Giraffe album on CD. I'm not the right guy to do a Kevin Gilbert. Honestly, I've only listened to a handful of things here and there from him, so I'm not the right guy for that. Speaking of vocalists, what do you think of Mike Patton? Good for what he does, right? I wouldn't say he's like a great singer or anything like that, but I was a big fan of those couple Faith No More albums he was on. And, I've heard a little bit of Mr. Bungle here and there. So, the guy's definitely different. He's unique. I'll give him that. From Brad, SMTG, something like that. Hey, Pete, just wondering what Gibsons you have hanging up in the background of some episodes. New subscriber, love the channel. Cool, thanks. So I've got, hold on. See it over there. Well, you can see one of them. Well, you can kind of see two of them hanging up there. But that one you're seeing right there, the Heritage Cherry one, That is a standard. I also have a traditional, which is a gold top, and then I have a tobacco sunburst, which is a classic. Okay, so I love them. I love my Gibsons. And one of you asked if I could just play some guitar on camera one of these days. I'm just kind of a hack. I like to collect guitars. I've been playing since I was like 15 years old. I don't play professionally. I don't consider myself a virtuoso or anything like that. I just play it to have fun and riff around and things like that. So maybe someday you'll see me do it. In fact, if you look at, you can hear me playing for like 10 seconds on if you go to my tributes playlist. I play the intro to Hell's Bells on my tribute to Malcolm Young when he died. But of course that's 10 seconds long, whatever. But yeah, maybe one of these days I'll just rip out one of the guitars and do a crazy little quick solo for you, whatever. Like I said, I don't consider myself very good, but if you guys really want to hear it, I could do it. So, from Ron Beal, hey Pete, been digging the videos since I found the channel a few weeks ago. Cool. Your thoughts on these bands I haven't heard you mention. Sensational Alex Harvey Band and Sniffin' the Tears. I have never listened to Sniffin' the Tears, but the Sensational Alex Harvey Band, I actually have a bunch of their albums on CD. That's a good band. Again, another one of those bands kind of hard to categorize. They were kind of a glammy band, but kind of like a really good, bluesy hard rock band. I really love their live albums. The studio albums are really good too, but I think that was one of those bands that were probably best enjoyed live. And I have that live album is my favorite of all their albums. From Tarkus 522, hi Pete, love these Q&A videos, as do everybody it seems. Was wondering if you were familiar with a couple new to me bands. Yuka and Chronoship from Japan. They're kind of jazzy prog. Yeah, that's. I was surprised. They are pretty damn good. We've actually covered a couple of their album releases on our website. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. There's some obviously very interesting music coming out of Japan, and I'm not hip to a lot of it because again, you can only get yourself exposed to so much and digest so much. We've gotten, I think just in this episode alone, I got all sorts of people asking about Japanese rock and prog and metal and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, just when you think you know a fair amount about a country and the music that's coming out of it, you really don't know shit about it. So, yeah. But, yeah, Yuka and Chronoship, a very, very cool little band. Also, another part of your question here, also Dutch band Dilemma. I have not heard of Dilemma, to my knowledge. Also, maybe a top 10 keyboard players video. Thanks for all you do. Perhaps, I could rattle off my top 10 favorite keyboard players. Probably, that probably include John Lord and Rick Wakeman and Keith Emerson and Eric Norlander, Tony Banks. God, so many other guys out there. So many great ones. Anyway, that's a good idea. From Scott Cushing, how about a top 10 Ambrosia show? Possibly. From Marvel Fan 45, thank you for the Deep Purple recommendation. Sorry I didn't specify. No, I don't own any of their CDs. Okay, well, hopefully by now you do, after I gave you some really good recommendations there. And I'm buying the CDs soon. Listen to Machine Head, and that was amazing, so thanks. Cool. I'm a big prog rock guy, but thanks to you, I'm listening and buying tons of Sabbath and Led Zeppelin. I love them both. Great. What hard rock albums would you recommend? Well, that's kind of like a really broad question there, Marvel Fan 45. My suggestion, because again, I don't know what you own or what you don't own, go to our playlists here on the channel, go into the history of bands and genres and things like that playlist, and you'll find 3 videos, top hard rock. There's one is top hard rock and metal albums of the 70s, and then I did 2 additional parts 2 and 3 of the more underground stuff. I list a ton of stuff of more, underground and some semi-mainstream hard rock bands and albums from that era. That's your best recommendation because, I could sit there and I could recommend 100 albums to you. I don't think that's going to help you at all. But go listen to me describe the albums, talk about the bands, whatever kind of floats your boat. I would start from there. If you watch those videos and you still have no clue, come back and, maybe give me 2 or 3 bands that you're kind of interested in, and I'll tell you which albums to get. So let's go that route because that's a really, really broad question. All right. From Carlos Abad Vargas. Hey, Pete, keep up the good work. Do you think bands like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Megadeth, Rush, who's already retired, when not able to tour anymore because of age, tired of traveling, etc., should do like the Beatles, keep making new albums but not touring anymore? Greetings from Panama. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that, but here's the problem. Okay, so a lot of these like legacy bands, a lot of them have already gotten to the point where they are recording, or they have been recording, new studio albums, but the longtime fans, or even the casual fans, are just not, they're not buying the new music that they're putting out. That's the problem. And or maybe they're buying the new music, but they're not getting new fans. You know, in the old days it was different. You know, in the 70s and 80s, if you were a band that had been around for a bit, you release a new album, you know that all of your longtime fans and listeners are going to buy it, but you're also going to reach another 100,000 or 50,000 or 300,000 viewers, because that's, or listeners. That's just the way it was back then. It doesn't work that way now. So a lot of these bands you mentioned here, you know, Maiden, Priest, Megadeth, Rush, they're appealing to their fans. They're not, if they release new albums or go on tour, they're not necessarily reaching new people. All right, that's why you don't. That's why you see, if you look at like album sales or download sales or streaming, if you can go find all that information, it's like it's pretty static from, you know, from album to album to album, because they're not reaching new people. All right, that's just not the way it works nowadays. So, and a lot of them are of the opinion, it's like, well, and I'm going to use you know, bands like Styx have said it before. They put out a new album 2 years ago, which was great, well received. But for many years, Styx was just like, we're not going to put out new music because nobody buys it. We'll just go and tour. That's how they make their money, right? A lot of these bands don't make money putting out new music anymore. That's the sad state of the industry, guys. I mean, it's just, you know, nobody's making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on new music. They're spending all this time in the studio, paying for studio time, paying, you know, to put together these albums, and they release it, and, you know, nobody buys them. As great as they might be. You know, I mean, look at Deep Purple, my favorite band, right? They have put out some really good albums in the last 20 years. And they sell, but they're not selling big numbers. That's why Deep Purple tours like, God, almost like, what, 300 days a year? It's like they have to. A lot of these bands do that. That's what they make their money doing, touring. So when these bands decide, like Rush, perfect example, I would have loved Rush to, hey, keep making albums. I have a feeling Deep Purple is going to do that. They're going to stop touring because they just can't anymore. Because let's face it, most of these guys are older, right? But why not keep making albums, right? And that's what you do to kind of keep fresh in the eyes and minds and ears of your fans. So Rush is a sad thing, because I think Neil has just basically said, I don't want to do music anymore. I'm done. He doesn't want to play live. It doesn't seem like he wants to record. Geddy has kind of recently said that too. And I'm getting the impression that, you know, Alex might do a solo album or might do a guest star appearance here or there. But it's just weird how those guys just kind of like said, all right, we're retiring from everything for the most part. You know, what will Maiden do? Will they keep putting out albums? You know, Judas Priest. We kind of thought Priest were going to be done touring and would just put out an album once every 5 years. Now they're still going out and touring. Why? Because that's how they make their money. You know, so I think that I would love these bands to continue to put out new music long after they stop touring, and maybe they will. But the sad state of the music industry is that you don't make money on making albums anymore. That's why they keep touring. That's how they make their money. That's just the way it is. It's reality. From Anthony Perrault, how about a top 50 one-hit wonders show? Pete, pop or rock? One of my favorites was Sky High by Jigsaw. That's a good tune. Also ever hear of a Florida rock band from the 80s called Stranger? I've never heard of Stranger before, but God, one-hit wonders. I mean, possibly. I think top 50 is a little extreme, but maybe top 20 or something like that. That's an interesting question. Perhaps. From Super Strike 9, I think a top 10 songs of top 10 songs would be great. Basically, your top 10 songs of all time. Did you not see my top 10 all time that I posted 2 weeks ago? Dude, do your homework. Come on, people. You got to inspect what's going on in the channel here before you ask some of these questions. I urge all of you to regularly go back and look at videos you might have missed. Go to our playlist. That's why I have the playlist functionality. You can easily go and scan, all based on, you know, whether it's top 10 songs, best to worst albums, rants, history of whatever. Just go in there and scan, see what I've gotten. I know, I understand everybody doesn't come here to the channel every day. I know some of you do, some of you don't. So, but yeah, no, I've already done that. I've already done my 10 favorite songs of all time. I did that, like I said, about 2 weeks ago, I think. From Lisa T. I see you have caught on to what kind of questions I've been asking every week, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. Lisa T is a huge Jethro Tull fan, obviously, and she knows I'm a big fan too. So every week she asks me Jethro Tull related questions. Here's another one. What is your favorite Jethro Tull live album? Well, I mean, that's pretty simple, isn't it? Bursting Out. You know, Tull's got a bunch of live albums and some not-so-official live albums, but come on, that Bursting Out album is pretty damn great, right? I don't think they're ever going to get much better than that. From Chaos Monger 73. So no, let me go back to Lisa again. So Lisa, here's my question for you this week. I want you to ask me for next time, questions relating to ex-Jethro Tull members who went on to other bands, what some of my favorite albums or bands are from ex-Jethro Tull members, okay? So I'm going to leave you that as the framework. You can kind of mix it around a little bit if you want, but I'd like for you to ask me a Jethro Tull-related question about ex-Jethro Tull members and their bands, okay? Boom, there you go. From Chaos Monger 73, great show. I'm hooked to the channel. Good. Do you like the band Axe from Florida? Living on the Edge, Offering, and Nemesis are great records. They take me back to the old days. Yeah, those are solid, right? Good. Real catchy, melodic, crunchy, hard rock stuff. I always dug those Axe albums. That's a good question. And Chaos Monger is a fellow American living in Finland. How do you like Finland, my friend? Pretty good music happening in Finland these days, right? Very cool. From Majid. Hello, Pete. Hope you're having a great time. I am. I always have a great time. My question for you is, what's your favorite band lineup of all time? Majid's favorite is Rainbow's second lineup, the Rising and On Stage lineup. How ironic you're asking that question, and I'm wearing my, look at that, you got Richie and Ronnie right there. I have to say, that ranks pretty high with me. If you're asking my one favorite lineup of all time, that's a little tough. I'll name a couple, and again, my opinion could change like any day, but definitely the Rainbow Rising lineup, okay? So you got Jimmy Bain, Tony Carey, Cozy Powell, Ronnie James Dio, Richie Blackmore. That's pretty fucking great. How about Peter Gabriel, Steve Hackett, Phil Collins, I was going to say Peter Collins, Michael Rutherford, and Tony Banks. God, Peter Banks, yes. That classic lineup of Genesis, that ranks very high with me. Led Zeppelin. Doesn't get much better than that. How about Richie Blackmore, Ian Gillan, Roger Glover, John Lord, Ian Pace, that classic Mark II era of Purple. How about Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, and Ozzy Osbourne, the classic Sabbath lineup. I'll throw one more at you. Mick Box, David Byron, Gary Thane, Ken Hensley, Lee Kerslake, the classic lineup of Uriah Heep. Those are, to me, some of my favorites. As far as which is my favorite, it'd be hard to say. Really hard to say between them, but at least you guys know what some of my favorites are. From Rock Fanatic, great Q&A show, as are all the shows on this channel are, and great seeing you on Jeff Young's radio show. Cool. I'm glad some of you guys have checked that out. Jeff has been saying on some of my appearances, he's had just a lot of extra people that have come on there to check it out, and I'm glad to see that. But, guys, Jeff's got a great show every week, so don't just go on there when I'm on there. I mean, I hope to be a maybe once a month guest or whatever Jeff wants on his show, whatever we can work out time-wise. But Jeff has got a killer show every week, so don't just tune in when I'm on there, because every week he's playing great music. Jeff is very like-minded to me. He really appreciates music that you don't normally hear, or deep cuts, or whatever you want to call it. So Jeff is really good about playing bands and artists that's off the beaten path, that have great musicianship, great songwriting, all that kind of stuff, and really talking about the music and giving his insight on, a lot of this stuff that, the mainstream doesn't often embrace and accept. So kudos to Jeff for having that show. That's Music Without Boundaries. Check it out, jeffyoungjams.com. I urge you guys to listen to that every Monday. And if you can't listen to it Monday night, each of the shows are archived and recorded, so you can listen to them at your leisure, while you're working, while you're in the car, wherever. The next day, any day of the week, he's got the list of all the shows, and you can skip around and listen to segments that you like. Very, very cool stuff. Question for the next Q&A from Rock Fanatic. This is probably one of the more serious ones. What kind of effect do you think the social response of the September 11th attacks had on rock and metal? Apologies if you were asked this before. I don't think I've been asked that before. So, all right. So as most of you know, or maybe some of you don't know, I live in New York. I've always lived in New York. So that was a very tough time for myself and almost everybody that I knew. It was a terrible day. The aftermath was terrible. It took a lot of healing needed to be done. So I think a lot of bands who were, they didn't necessarily need to be from the U.S., but who played here quite often, I think that the September 11th attacks affected them as well. And I think living through that, whether it was, bands, musicians, or even, sports and what have you, there was a need for everybody to heal together and to help each other heal and to do whatever it is that you did to help your friend, your relative, your whoever. Everybody had to help each other heal. And I think a lot of, bands and musicians were kind of like, wow, the world has changed, right? Things are different now. The world is not as safe as we thought it was. And, and then a few years later, you had the assassination of Dimebag Darrell, while he was on stage playing, right? And that also, again, the world is not safe, people. Not safe at all. And I think that really changed the way people looked at it. But I think a lot of rock and metal bands really did a great job of trying to help the world. And specifically, I'm talking about, here in the U.S. and specifically more in New York, need a lot of healing. And I think that a lot of bands really tried, after a little bit of a grieving period, really tried to get back to things and really try to help make the world a better place, or make this country a better place, or make this, make New York City a better place. New Yorkers were really deeply affected by that. So, yeah, I mean, and you still feel it, right? I think even more so today, the world is just not a safe place, people. It really isn't. And, yeah, and I think that we're still feeling it. And I think that a lot of bands and musicians really have tried to heal the world. And again, I'm going to go back to my friend Jeff Young and his Music Without Boundaries show. Jeff talks about all the time how music is healing, right? And a lot of musicians, they create music not just to make money, but to help people to better their lives, right? Because for a lot of us, music is therapy, music is healing. What better way to get yourself out of a funk or out of a depression than to hear a song that really resonates with you, right? So, great question, Rock Fanatic. I like that one a lot. That's the kind of question I like, right? Because it makes me think and, really makes me kind of just form an opinion about something. From Alex Hamilton, hey, Pete, what about giving us a blast on your guitar sometimes? Well, like I just mentioned before, maybe sometimes. We'll see. Question 2, what are your thoughts on the British band The Greatest Show on Earth from the early 70s? Wow, that's a very cool band, very obscure band. I'm glad you asked that. I actually just got their album on CD maybe 6 months ago, if that, for the first time. Really good band. They got horns, Hammond organ, Latin percussion, screaming guitar work. It's kind of like this weird, it's almost like Santana meets Deep Purple meets Chicago kind of thing going on. It's awesome. Really, really good album, good band. And they don't really fit into any kind of categorization because, it's a little bit of jazz, a little bit of R&B, some hard rock, some like Latin rock, jazz fusion, prog rock. It's all kind of colliding. Very, very cool album. Check that out. Great question, or Alex, sorry. From Marvel Fan 45. I recently started listening to Bloodhound, Herman Frank, and Rhapsody of Fire. Thanks to you. Cool. So you watch my What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility show. Awesome. But what other power metal albums and bands would you recommend? Okay, so though I would say, you know what, Marvel Fan, if you like those 3 bands, go onto the AFM Records website and just check out, or go. I regularly talk about and review the AFM roster of bands on the What's Hot show, because they've been very nice to send us, actual copies of the CDs. We don't get a lot of those anymore these days, and I like to be able to show those off so you can see cool covers, look at the inside, all that kind of stuff. They have a lot of quality bands on their label. If you like Bloodbound, Herman Frank, and Rhapsody of Fire, you're going to love those. I would check out also on the same label, Iron Savior. Iron Savior is very, very good. Primal Fear, probably my favorite power metal band. You can't go wrong with any Primal Fear album. Great, great band. Classic Halloween, right? Or more recent Halloween. Blind Guardian, Iced Earth, Nightwish, Camelot. I mean, that's some of the cream of the crop for me. There's so many power metal bands. And some of, some of them are real cheesy and what have you, but there's some that are just like head and shoulders above the rest. Those are some of the ones I'd investigate now. Very, very cool. From Alex L. Hey, Pete, thank you very much for answering my question. I have another. Thin Lizzy, Live and Dangerous. According to Visconti, 70% of guitar work is overdubbed. According to Robbo, that's Mr. Robertson, Ryan Robertson, nothing is overdubbed. So we do not know who to trust. If it is true that there is a 70% overdubbing, would you be disappointed or felt cheated or something? In the end, it actually does not matter. The album is great, but still, if something is live, it should be live. And how can we compare that album to some of the other 70s live albums if we have something like that on the back of our mind? What do you think? By the way, Did you have a chance to listen to Lebi Il Sol? Okay, well, let me answer your question there. So I did go listen to a couple of their tracks on YouTube, Leb I Soul, however you say that. Tasty guitar work on that stuff, I just really didn't like the vocals. Not really my cup of tea. Back to your original question. All right, so you've got to understand, a lot of those classic live albums in the 70s have been retouched. There's probably very few of them that are the actual recordings that happened live that day when they were recorded. I mean, come on, you've all heard the stories. We've heard that parts of Live and Dangerous were, had some touching up in the studios. Wouldn't surprise me if they did. If you go and listen to if you go watch the DVD, you could hear some definite differences. I know they weren't all recorded at the same shows, but Brian Robertson was probably drunk out of his mind most of that tour, so I don't know how much he would remember, whether it was overdubbed or not. But I've heard like certain things where, Kiss Alive, another thing, Judas Priest Unleashed in the East. I've heard there were some overdubbings on the UFO Strangers in the Night. I think most of those live albums were touched up in the studios because you want it to be a live album, but you also want people, not every band is 100% on every night, so you want people to get that full live experience, but you want it to sound good. So I think most of those classic live albums were touched up in the studios. It is what it is. I've accepted it long ago. It doesn't bother me. I just think a great live album is a great live album. If they, tweak 10 seconds of a guitar solo on one song, or if they touch up a couple vocals here and there, whatever. It's, it honestly doesn't bother me. And who do we believe? I don't know. I would have to think the producer or the engineer knew what the hell was going on, right? That they were there. They were there doing all the stuff in the studio. Was Brian Robertson sitting in the studio throughout the whole post-production album, process of that live album? I kind of doubt it. So, but who knows? Whatever. My opinion, though, is it doesn't really matter. A great live album is a great live album. Most of them have been touched up a little bit. From Robert Stacy, Sammy or Dave? Well, I'll put it to you this way. I think that Sammy is a better singer. However, the material when Dave was in the band, obviously, leagues better. And I think Sammy is a better singer today. I think Dave has pretty much lost his voice. But, those classic early Van Halen albums, I mean, come on. Those are great. When Sammy first joined the band, for the 5150 album, I was big into it. Because I was never a huge Van Halen fan growing up. Believe it or not. I didn't really start to get into Van Halen until probably like the 80s, mid 80s. And so I was pretty big on the Sammy years, for a while, because I was never a huge Van Halen fan before that. I always appreciated what they did. But yeah, looking back on it now, it's like, Sammy's a better singer, but man, the classic Van Halen, those first, 4 or 5 albums with Dave, you can't really beat that, right? And whatever you think of him as a vocalist, I mean, he was a perfect fit for that band, so. From Lonnie Vire. See, I said it right this time, Lonnie. As always, your videos are the best. Thank you. How about a history of John Wetton? I think he, much like Paul Rodgers, has fronted at least 3 great bands, and it's a crime that he and those bands aren't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Both he and Paul and the respective bands deserve that honor. Thanks for everything. Well, like I stated before, I don't think I'm going to do like a history of just a musician or whatever, because it's just encompassing way too much. I would rather do like histories of specific bands. I mean, but I see the point. I get it. And as far as John, I love John Wetton. May he rest in peace. And so many of the bands that he was in, I mean, Jesus, and yeah, if you're going to do like a history of a musician, he's like a perfect guy to do it for, because, I mean, look at all the bands he's played with. I mean, Crimson and Family and Mogul Thrash and Heap and Roxy Music and Asia and all the solo stuff. God, and I'm probably missing some. Yeah, it's crazy. And as far as Paul Rodgers is concerned, yeah, how Bad Company and or Free or Paul himself are not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think no disrespect to John Wetton, but man, Paul Rodgers, that's like a no-brainer right there. From Jamie Laszlo, this April 13th is Record Store Day. I don't know if you're familiar with this event. I certainly am. But it involves many people sleeping overnight in front of record stores waiting for it to open at 8 a.m. Some artists release a limited supply of reissued albums, while some Others release never-before-released live albums. And on top of that, other artists even release entirely new music. Since it's called Record Store Day, everything is released on vinyl only, and most of these titles are sold out by noon. Some things you might have been interested in are Blue Oyster Cult Archives 1 and 2, Dickie Betts live from the Lone Star Roadhouse, Alice Cooper live from the AstroTurf, and this year Mastodon is releasing a cover of Stairway to Heaven that will be dedicated to their late manager. There will also be a live EP, I think you meant to say, ALP, put down. So what's your take on waiting overnight for these releases, and would a cool new release by a band you like ever tempt you to buying a turntable? And for the record, I'll be in line by 6 a.m. this year. Well, good for you, Jamie. I have, most of you have seen Steve Keeler, a good friend of mine, who has a place called Rock Fantasy in Middletown, New York. He has Record Store Day every year. I've been to a bunch of them. I didn't go last year, but I've been to a few of them. I'm not the kind of guy to wait out. I'm a little too old to be waiting out 6 a.m. to pick up anything these days. Yeah, and I know he usually has stuff that's only available that day from time to time. I had nothing that's ever really been must-have for me. That's pretty cool that Mastodon's releasing a cover of Stairway to Heaven. That's kind of interesting. I'd like to hear it. I don't necessarily need to own it. But yeah, I know some people who are, really big into this stuff. I don't collect vinyl anymore, so to me it's not, not that big of a draw. Would a cool new release by a band that you like ever tempt you into buying a turntable? I don't know. To be honest with you, I get so much money invested in all this stuff. I don't know where I would put vinyl if I started doing that. So I have avoided anything with a turntable or going back to the vinyl ways. I just can't. I just don't have the room for it, and I just have way too many CDs at this point. But I see the appeal, and Record Store Day is cool. I always liked it. From Wizardo Fox, hey Pete, what are your favorite solos of Alex Lifeson? Mine are Kid Gloves and Cut to the Chase. There's so many great ones. God, I could sit and think about this all day, but let me, some of my real favorites, right? La Villa Strangiato, obviously. I love the solo to Free Will. And Limelight. Again, these are not necessarily my favorite songs, but some of my favorite solos, but he's got so many of them. I could do a whole show on favorite Alex Lifeson solos, huh? From Chris Swallow. Love your videos, and apologies if this has been asked before. I only discovered you recently. How about doing a show exclusively dedicated to female-fronted prog bands, namely Curved Air and Renaissance? Have heard you mention Renaissance in passing, but never Curved Air, or maybe just female artists you like in general? Thank you. Well, again, I just did a top 10 songs of Renaissance just yesterday, 2 days ago. Go check that out. As far as Curved Air, I don't own enough Curved Air. I haven't heard enough Curved Air to do a Curved Air show. I have like 1 or 2 Curved Air albums on CD. But I also, on a recent What's Hot show, I did a review of one of the new Curved Air live albums that they released from the vaults from that British prog festival in Germany back in whatever year, 1973 or something like that. So go check out some of the recent What's Hot, shows, new product shows, and I do a little Curved Air thing on there. Good band though. I like a couple of their albums. From Stephen Race, hey Pete, thanks again for addressing my questions on the last Q&A. You're awesome. Well, I guess I didn't hit home with the 70s krautrock bands. Well, hit and miss. No, that's true. Can't win them all. It's all good. At least I'm trying to come up with bands you haven't mentioned yet. Here's a couple for you. Ever hear of a 70s rock group called Jade Warrior? I absolutely have. Jade Warrior is a very cool band. They kind of started out more of like a little psych band with some cool like Jimi Hendrix-y guitar solo stuff in there, little bits of hard rock, and then they became this really cool kind of like almost like new age band, with really atmospheric songs and flutes and acoustic instruments, a little bit of electric guitar and stuff like that. They really defy description, but I like Jade Warrior. I have a whole bunch of their albums. And Steven says, I own Last Autumn's Dream, Released, Floating World, and Waves. Yeah, they're also great. And second, for a more metallic, heavier sound of rock, how about Monster Maggot? Another great band with some catchy tunes. I own Power Trip, Monolithic Baby, God Says No, Dopes to Infinity, and Mindfuck are all great albums. Just curious to see what your take is on these two bands. Love your reviews. Keep on coming. Or keep them coming. I kind of like Monster Maggot. I have a handful of their albums. I think they're pretty cool. Again, a band very important to the whole kind of stoner rock movement of the last 20, 25 years, and they kind of did this kind of stoner doomy thing with a ton of like psych, right? So it's like kind of like Hawkwind meets Black Sabbath. Very important band. I haven't liked all the material I've heard from them, but they've had some albums that have been much better than others, and a pretty cool band, I think, and a very important band. From Dude Why? Hey Pete, were you fooled into thinking that the boy Gerald Bostock wrote the lyrics to Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick when you first bought the album? Dude, no. Come on. Why would I have thought that? No, absolutely not. Were some people? I don't know. Possibly. From AZDH85224, did you ever listen to Creation from Japan? Felix Pappalardi did the album with them. She Got Me is the song to listen to. Search for it on YouTube. Yep, that stuff is pretty good, the Creation stuff. Good kind of bluesy hard rock, you know. Blistering guitar work. I dig it. There's that word again. Blistering guitar rock. Guitar work. God, this show's going on too long. Yeah, also check out, go onto YouTube, check out Creation's Tobacco Road. That's quite good too. From Matty Boy Walker. What's your opinion of 90s alternative American rock bands, Counting Crows, Goo Goo Dolls, Gin Blossoms, and Hootie and the Blowfish? Do you have one of the four you'd like best in any particular standout albums or tracks? If you've been following this show for a while, you probably can be pretty safe to assume that I'm really not into that kind of stuff. And no, I have no interest in any of those bands, so I really can't comment. You know, maybe a song or two here and there, but this is not bands that I ever listen to or really like, so I really don't have an opinion on any of them. From our friend Spaghetti Lee El Douchebag with the greatest YouTube name ever. In Europe, the heavy psychedelic stoner rocker scene is thriving. They've had festivals there for years. NYC, New York City, is about to have its first Desert Fest. What's your thoughts on this genre, and are familiar with some of these bands? Color Haze from Germany, Lunar Dunes from the UK, Earthless from the USA, The Machine from Holland. I have owned, there's so many bands in this subgenre, Spaghetti Lee. I mean, it's crazy, and there's a lot of really good ones. You know, whether you call them stoner rock or desert rock or psych, whatever. So many great ones. A lot. Out of these four, though, the only one I'm familiar with is Earthless, who I absolutely love. Earthless are great. I urge anybody to check out Earthless. Now, their early stuff is mostly instrumental. It's just long, drawn-out kind of psychedelic stoner jams with some scream and guitar work. A lot of wah-wah and kind of heavyish, right? But their most recent album, which is awesome, they've got vocals on, and they take on more of like kind of like a traditional stoner / doomy Sabbath type of thing. But a great band. Great guitar work. Really good grooves and vibe. I really dig them a lot. But yeah, there's a lot of great, there's so many bands in the stoner scene. It's just absolutely crazy how many bands are out there. From Over the Edge, just wondering if you've ever heard of any of these Japanese all-female hard rock and metal bands like Aldius, Mary's Blood, Love Bites, and Bandmaid, and if so, what are your thoughts on them? I think they're all doing fantastic things, and I don't believe I've heard any mention of them on your channel. Okay, I've never heard of any of those bands before. Okay? I'm getting a lot of questions from you guys about all these obscure Japanese bands, whether it be prog or metal or what have you. So, again, my knowledge of what's coming out of Japan is probably pretty limited. But anyway, I was intrigued enough by these band names that I went onto YouTube and I watched a video from each one of them just to get an idea of what they were all about. They're all pretty similar, and it's all kind of like modern hard rock / metal stuff. Very well played, and they're all female bands, okay? Each one of these bands, I mean, they're like dressed to the nines in these videos, and some of them are dressed like, you know, like schoolgirls, and some of them are dressed like, you know, in suits and all this. It's crazy stuff, but really catchy music, very well produced. I was surprised at how good some of this stuff is. So, and don't mind me if I'm moving out a lot because my back is killing me from sitting in one position for so long. But yeah, I urge any of you to check out Aldius, Aldious, Mary's Blood, Love Bites, and Bandmaid. In fact, the Bandmaid band, if I remember correctly, those are the ones dressed up as maids. It's crazy stuff. The costumes were really got me, and the music was great, but the costumes were like, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. So, but very cool. Great question. From Tom Ostrander. Hi, Pete. Was browsing through the CDs at a place that sells used CDs and picked up a couple of discs by the Killer Dwarves. I think they're Canadian. Kind of 80s hair metal, but I thought they sounded great. The names were Method to the Madness and Dirty Weapons. Do you own any of their stuff? And if so, can you tell me more about them? I don't own any Killer Dwarves, but I remember when they were just coming out, like in the mid-'80s, they had a little bit of attention here in the U.S., not a ton. And I think I might have seen them open up for another band at some point. But I always thought the music was okay, nothing special, which is why I never went and bought any of their stuff. I even went, you know, preparing for this show, I went and listened to a couple things on YouTube, and I was like, and it basically just solidified my impression that I had 30 some odd years ago. So, okay, nothing spectacular. From Forest20, have you ever been to Minneapolis, Minnesota? And if so, have you been to the legendary concert venue First Avenue and 7th Street entry? Nope, never been there. Sorry. From Niels B, do you know the Australian band Midnight Oil, and what do you think? And do you like Nick Cave? I know both of these artists. I have really, other than the one or two hit songs that Midnight Oil have, I've never listened to anything else by them. And Nick Cave, I've never really explored, so sorry I can't help you on either one of those much. From MDK, 1958. Hey Pete, Hi Pete, another Pete in the UK. Oh, okay, cool. So MDK is actually Pete. I'm a fairly recent watcher of your videos, and I'm loving them, especially Q&As and the best to worst. More of those, please. I have one question and one suggestion for you, if you don't mind. We are used to these days to having each major tour filmed and subsequently released on DVD. However, this wasn't always the case, especially in the mid-60s and 70s. Which concert or tour do you wish had been professionally filmed at the time? My top three would probably be Floyd's The Wall, Genesis' The Lamb Lies Down, and most of all, Hawkwind's original Space Ritual. Wouldn't that have been cool? My suggestion is, how about a video on your top 15 music-related films, the top 5 concert videos, along with the top 5 music documentaries, and finally, the top 5 fictional music films. Oh, my Lord. Jesus. A lot of questions here. Thanks and keep up the good work. P.S. You do such a good job that I'll forgive you for not liking Magma. Probably the world's greatest band. Yeah, I don't know about that. I know a lot of people love them, man. I just do not like Magma. A lot of questions here. Way too much to cover on the show, my friend. And I'll take some of your suggestions. See if we could do that in the future. I think I've already answered stuff about, like the fictional films. We talked about Almost Famous and Spinal Tap and stuff like that on prior shows. But as far as what I really like the most about this question is those fairly famous or iconic or legendary tours that were never filmed. I absolutely think The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway would have been awesome. Even though, if you were to ask the surviving, the band, they'd tell you that was probably a disaster. But I think for the fans, that'd be cool to see. I would like to see a full, the Rush 2112 tour on video. Or how about Jethro Tull from the Minstrel and the Gallery tour, 1975, or even the Passion Play tour, I think would be really cool. Tull right around that time, not a lot of footage exists, so there's some cool stuff right there. But yeah, Hawkwind from the Space Ritual, that would be pretty mind-blowing, I think. From Scalagrimmer Kveltvelson. Hi Pete, thanks for another amazing Q&A. What I would like to know from you this time, what do you think about the 12-bar blues pattern that a lot of blues and rock songs are based on? I have to admit that after enjoying it for some time, after discovering rock music, nowadays it sounds very boring and predictable to me. That's why I'm into prog rather than blues rock. But, but there's a time and a place for everything, Scalagrimmer. There's a time and a place for, sometimes you just want to hear something simple, down to earth and groovy, and a 12-bar blues rave up is the best thing for you. And there are other times where you want something a little more challenging. You want your mind to be kind of getting into it and, that sort of thing. So there's a place for everything. I listen to a lot of different stuff. I find there are some days, man, I just want to hear some pulverizing, crushing heavy metal. There's days I like the kind of looseness of a 12-bar blues or blues rock type of thing with lots of guitar solos and things. And there's other times where, man, I just want to hear some challenging prog or jazz fusion or something. So there's a place for everything, right? Sometimes people grow out of styles that they used to listen to. It's the way it is. But I like to think that it's nice to be open-minded and accepting of a lot of different styles because you're not going to be in the same mood for the same thing all the time. I found that when I first seriously got into prog heavy, it was in the early 90s. And after, I was listening to nothing but prog through much of the 90s. Because to me, metal it was a weird decade for metal, and I was a huge metal fan in the 80s. And then, but I found at the end of the 90s, man, I wanted to get back into metal again. I was you can only listen to one style for so long, right? Before you kind of crave something different. So, from Douglas Dorman, thoughts on Badlands? Okay, I think we already covered that earlier in this episode. 87 or 88 metal blues also. Yeah, I love Badlands. Also, yes, drama. Just got it, love it. No Anderson, but the Bugle Boys, horn and downs and shit, lost it. They did a great reproducing the sound. Your question gets a little convoluted here. But your feelings on that record. I'm a big fan of the Drama album. That's actually the first Yes album I ever owned, believe it or not. And bought it when it came out. And yeah, I love Drama. I think it's one of their stronger albums. And I think it's definitely stronger than Tormato. I think it's definitely stronger than 90125. I think it's one of their forgotten gems, to be honest with you. I'm a big Drama fan. It has some of Steve Howe's best guitar playing on it. Squire kicks ass on it. Great album. I love the production. I love the songs. It's good. It's kind of rocking, heavy, yes, at times, you know. From Chet Grablowski. Hey, Pete, I'm the same age as you and like most of the same music as you do. Cool. I recently got turned on to a new band named Whiskey Myers, a southern rock band with dual lead guitars, a real Skinner Marshall Tucker vibe. Are you familiar? Yeah, I own 2 Whiskey Myers albums on CD, and I dig them quite a bit. That's a really good band. I urge any of you who like good classic southern rock to check them out because they carry a lot of the influences and they really good sound to them. From Tate Davis. Hey, Pete, what is your opinion on the Detroit band Frigid Pink? This is a band that I've been getting into recently. If you haven't heard of them, I'd start with their debut album. I think their Earth Omen album is the Long Lost Dry Heap album. What do you think? I've been aware of those guys for a long time, and I've had, like, I think all 3 of their albums in my, like, Amazon wish list or cart, whatever the hell you call it, for a long time, and I just never have pulled the trigger on it. But I went and listened to the Earth Omen album here on YouTube, and that's really damn good. Great Hammond organ and guitar work. I'm actually going to get that first, I think, and then get probably the first one and the second one. But thanks for that. From Rich Billionaire. Come on, Pete. Why did you attend a Grand Funk Railroad without Mark Farner? Did you not know how Mel and Don ripped Mark off? I mean, yeah, we all know that, right? But, you know, Grand Funk played. It was a summer show. They played like half hour from my house for $20. I've never seen the band in any incarnation live. I love the band. I love those songs. I wanted to go see it live. I mean, what am I going to do? Oh, no, they fucked over Mark. I'm never going to see them. It's like, no. I mean, yeah, I know that they dicked him over. I totally get it. Was it wrong? Yeah, but I wanted to see Grand Funk. I wanted to hear Grand Funk Railroad tunes live. I mean, so sue me, you know. Would I like for them to patch it up and you know, tour together, the 3 of them? Yeah, I'd love it. But, you know, it is what it is, right? From Aljack79 Johnston. Have you heard of a blues rock guitarist and singer from here in England called Ainslie Lister? The guy is awesome. I've seen him live about 8 times. My favorite album is Everything I Need, followed by Upside Down. He plays great blues and great rock and is an awesome guitar player. Also check out his song Balls of Steel on the album All or Nothing. It is not to AC/DC. Please check him out. Yeah, I listened to a couple tunes. Pretty good. Not bad. Good player. Got a lot of energy. He's young. From Peter M. Hi, are you a fan of Cheap Trick? Not sure if I've heard you mention them before. Could you do a best to worst albums or top 10? I am a fan of Cheap Trick. I have a lot of the early Cheap Trick albums. I think the last one I have is Dream Police, though. I don't know if I have any past that. I don't think so. I don't know. Anyway, I could possibly do a top 10 song. I couldn't do a best to worst because, like I said, they've put out a ton of albums since I've stopped buying them. But a top 10 songs I could probably do. Possibly. From Neil Bridgens. Hey, Pete, as a teenager, I bought Rhinos, Winos, and Lunatics by Man and Octoberon by Barclay James Harvest. Never having heard those bands at the time, both albums will make my best of 100 albums of all time. Wow. What do you think of them? Strange how certain albums just hit you at a certain time in your life. You know, they're both solid, very solid albums. I wouldn't, well, for me anyway, I wouldn't say either one would sniff my top 100 albums of all time. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just certain albums affect certain people at different times, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that would be in my top 100 albums of all time that people would be like, really? You know? So, but both are very solid. Those Man albums are pretty damn good. And October Run is a very solid Barclay James Harvest album. I wouldn't put it in my top 5 favorite by them, but it's pretty close. It's just a good album. Barclay James Harvest had a lot of really solid albums around that time period. From Bongalong, did you ever leave a concert with your face hurting from smiling continuously during an amazing performance? For me, it was when I saw Gentle Giant at the Santa Monica Civic Center in 1975. I had this stupid grin on my face for days. Yeah. Well, if I were in your seat, I probably would have as well, because I never got to see Gentle Giant live. So, I mean, I wouldn't say a face hurting from a smile. I can think of a few concerts where what I was seeing either almost brought me to tears. I was just so excited to be there and so great to hear the music. I think, and I told this on my Renaissance Top 10 Song show, when I saw Renaissance about, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. I can't remember exactly when it was the first time. Most of the show was pretty magical, and I was just kind of like, wow, this is awesome. And then they played at the end of the show, they played Ashes Are Burning, and I was just like in my glory and tears coming down my eyes. It was like one of the most beautiful things I'd ever experienced live at a concert. And then seeing The Who in 2002, literally months after John Entwistle died, I had tickets for a while, and then he died. We thought they were going to cancel the tour. They went on with it. And as sad as that was that he passed away, they were so fired up that night. And it was at Madison Square Garden, and, I had a bunch of beers, and it was there with my buddy, and we were just so into it. And I remember just thinking, how great is this? And the whole show, I was just like absolutely fired up. Probably had a big grin on my face for all I know. I mean, I wasn't looking at myself. But yeah, that's two that come to mind. I mean, but I've seen so many shows that really made me happy, you know. From DC Tune Time. Hey, Pete, any thoughts about Enough's Enough? My favorite albums of theirs were Strength and Animals with Human Intelligence. Also, Splendor, whose debut was produced by Todd Rundgren. Yeah, I'm not an Enough's Enough fan. Sorry. A lot of that kind of stuff that you can classify with that band and whatever from that time period, I am just not into. And I am not familiar with Splendor, whose debut was produced by Todd Rundgren. Really? I'm surprised I have not heard that, because I like Todd Rundgren. He's produced a lot of great albums. From Raymond Kaiser. Pete, can you do a rant on all the rock artists you don't like, such as Motley Crue, Poison, Guns N' Roses, etc., and then tell us why you never took to them? Some of us are interested in knowing why. Yeah, I think I can. I think I have that on my list, too. A rant on kind of why I hate the bands that I hate. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of backlash on that one, but whatever. From Captain Howdy. Hey, Pete, enjoy your channel. My question is, what are your best double bill concerts you have seen? I have two right off my head. I've seen 82 Scorpions Blackout with Maiden. Scorpions and Maiden. Wow. Or I don't know if that's... Anyway. Trying to read all your stuff is jumbled together here, my friend Captain Howdy. Maiden Beast Tour 83, Maiden Peace of Mind with Saxon Power and Glory Tour. They were both great together. I think what you meant to say was 82 Scorpions Blackout with Rainbow, because that was the tour that I saw, and that's on my list. And as far as like 83 Maiden Peace of Mind with Saxon Power and the Glory. See, I saw, well, I don't know where you're located, but when I saw Maiden in 83, they were not with Saxon. Who were they with in 83? Was that Coney Hatch, perhaps? I think it was Coney Hatch or Fastway. One of the two. I can't remember which one. But anyway, you're asking me a question. Let me answer it. Scorpions and Rainbow, Madison Square Garden, 1982. Mind-blowing. Triumph, Saxon, 1982. Very early 1982 at the Palladium. That was Allied Forces Tour. Maiden, Queensryche at Radio City Music Hall, 1985. Awesome show. Ozzy, Metallica, 1986 at the Meadowlands Arena. Killer. And actually Metallica blew Ozzy. Ozzy was great, but Metallica just blew them off the face of the earth. And how about, here's a triple bill. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Deep Purple, and Dream Theater, 1998. Jones Beach Theater in Long Island. Great, great stuff. Proof that some good double and triple bills can happen, right? From Mike F. Hey, Pete, thank you for what you do. Love SOT. I got the latest from Candlemass. I love it. I was a little weird because it is doom metal, so I thought it was death metal. Now, two totally different things, my friend. So I looked up the meaning of doom and got a whole new look on doom metal. Can you give me more bands like Candlemass? And can you give me your opinion on the band Tear? Got two of their CDs, By Light of the Northern Star and The Gates of Hell. Love them. Once again, thank you. You were the best. Okay, as far as Tear goes, I don't dislike Tear. I like them. I just don't go and collect any of their stuff. A lot of that kind of like folk metal stuff. Again, I don't dislike it. I don't like it enough to really go out and buy any of it or collect much of it. Tear, and there's a bunch of other bands in that kind of genre. Tear are a very good band, very talented. I've just never gotten heavily into them. As far as Candlemass, I love Candlemass. So if you like that newest album, The Door to Doom, man, you can pick from any Candlemass album of the past. They're all great. But as far as other bands like Candlemass, try Solitude Eternus. Okay, their singer Rob Lowe actually sang for Candlemass for a bunch of years in recent years. He's not in them anymore, but he was on, I think, 2 or 3 albums by them. Solitude Eternus is very cool. That's Solitude, Aeternus. Solitude Eternus. If you like Candlemass, you'll love them. Pentagram, great doom band. Trouble is awesome. Okay, as well as oh God, I'm drawing a blank. The Skull. The Skulls or The Skull? The ex-singer from Trouble, his new band, The Skull, are also, if you like that sort of thing, also great. Pagan Altar, Witchfinder General, Count Raven, Sleep, and Pale Divine. Pale Divine are very, very good. Try any of those bands. If you investigate any of them, if you like Candlemass, you'll love all those. From James Ferranti, being a music reviewer, have you ever heard of the series of books called Rock Record, compiled by Terry Hounsome and Tim Chamber? It's the first book to cover lists of information about records, including artists, albums, catalog numbers. The book James owns is from '81. Yeah, I don't actually own one of them. At least I don't think that I do. But yeah, I used to use those back in the day. They used to have some local record stores back in the 80s that used to have those. So that's like if you had I think I might have told this story before. It's like I heard on the radio, this was probably like late 80s or very early 90s, I heard Evil Woman by Spooky Tooth on a local classic rock radio, and they never said who the song was and who it was, and I never heard the song before, and I loved it. And I'm like, how am I going to find out who played this song? You know, and I was going to call the radio station, but I was like, whatever. So I went down to the local record shop, and they had one of those books, and I was able to find the information in there. Of course, before you know it, I went and bought the album, and the rest is history. But yeah, those were great. I mean, what else did you have back in the day, right? It's amazing when you think about, you know, what we had to use to get our music information back in the day, because there was no internet. So it was crazy. You had to do stuff like looking through books and magazines and newspapers and things like that. All right, Jamie, home stretch here from Jamie Laszlo. I normally only ask one question, yeah. But I just found out about this band and this shit can't wait. Have you ever listened to the band Green Lung? I think they're your cup of tea. Yeah, I actually answered him on the channel itself. But Green Lung just released a full-length album called Woodland Rights. Even though it's a throwback to early Sabbath, they make it sound fresh while adding melody to spare. I absolutely love it. Yeah, that's I had never heard Green Lung before. That was pretty good stuff. And I'll tell you, Jamie, if you like Green Lung, check out a band called The Graviators, who I believe are from Sweden, if I remember correctly. The Graviators, Graviators, the band Greenleaf. Earthless, we talked a little bit about Earthless earlier here in the show, and the band Pale Divine. If you like Green Lung, you'll love all those other bands. Trust me. From Douglas Dorman, love it all. Consider myself a musicologist. Well, good for you. Best solos. I just rediscovered Gamma, The Voyager. The solo by Ronnie Montrose on that track is amazing. I love that song, Sustained Shred Note, which this solo just is crazy good. Are you familiar? Of course. Love all that stuff. I know you are. Any thoughts on Journey pre-Perry? Sean guitar work on the first Journey record is masterful. Look into the future. Next. Also his crushing guitar. Raleigh and Dunbar, phenomenal. Your take. Yeah, I mean, that early Journey stuff is great. I'm a big Neil Schon fan. I like all Journey, all right? All eras of Journey. But yeah, that first stuff is very cool. Very well, you know, you got to understand. I mean, he came from him and Greg came from Santana, and where a lot of that kind of fusiony stuff was going on. That's what they wanted Journey to be. They wanted to be like, kind of like a progressive fusion band. But then they started adding vocals and getting a little more unpopular. And then they realized, you know, with the record label pushing them from underneath, it's like, you guys can really make it big for yourself, but you got to move away from the instrumental stuff, right? But yeah, some killer playing on those early Journey albums. I absolutely agree. What else we got here? I feel it's way marginalized. Oh, the early Journey stuff. Yeah. And then he's like, have me on your show. I will fly to the East Coast. I'm sure you would. You mentioned Gentle Giant. Great record. Concur in the punk scene. Okay. Well, thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. From Peter Brickley. Hey, Pete, have you ever had the chance to hear Pierre Morellin's Gong with Alan Holdsworth or the Planet Gong Here and Now LPs? Also, do you like a band with trippy light show or just plain on stage? Well, yeah, Pierre Morellin's Gong with Holdsworth, those albums are great. You know, I'm not a huge Gong fan in general. I like some of their stuff. They were a little kind of trippy dippy for a while for me, especially the really, really early stuff. But I always appreciate what they did. But I really like the Pierre Morellin's Gong period. Okay, you know, you put Alan Holdsworth into anything, and it's great as far as I'm concerned. As far as like a band with a trippy light show or just plain on stage. I mean, you like a little bit of a light show, but some bands that doesn't mix well with, right? There are some bands who are just going to stand up there, and that's just, and if they're moving around and, you know, energetic, they don't need the light show. But for the bands that kind of just stand around and do nothing, a light show really helps, right? And especially if the music kind of lends itself to having that, right? So it all depends on the band. From Nick's Texans fans #1, hey Pete, there are two albums that come to mind when I think of extremely polarizing music: Captain Beefheart's Trout Mask Replica and The Shag's Philosophy of the World. I have heard people say these albums are amazing, and I've heard people say they're total shit. Where do you stand on these albums? Thanks as always, Pete, you're the man. Yeah, Captain Beefheart's music just, I've tried. I don't hate it. And that Trout Mask Replica album that's out there, right? I think that I always appreciated his music. His vocals just never really sat well. Even like, you know, when he would appear on, you know, some Frank Zappa stuff, I'd hear his voice and I'd be like, there's Captain again, you know. It's like, so I never really dug his vocals much. But yeah, that Trout Mask Replica album, there's some pretty intense stuff going on musically on that album, but it's not something I can listen to every day. It's pretty out there. I had never listened to the Shag's Philosophy of the World album till I was doing this research for this show, and I decided to go give that album a listen on YouTube. Man, that is awful. I can't believe anybody would like that. Holy moly. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I hope to never have to hear that again. From Raymond Kaiser. The new wave of heavy metal movement that came out of Great Britain produced a lot of groups, but only Iron Maiden and Def Leppard caught on in America. Why do you think the rest of them did not catch on, and why do you attribute that to it? Well, first of all, a lot of the bands didn't last long. I mean, that had a lot to do with it. There were some bands that kind of just came and went. I think some of them, like Satan, for instance, their music not much different than Maiden's music, but I think because they were called Satan, obviously they were not going to make it here. That's just the way it was. I think Saxon, Grim Reaper, and Raven did okay for themselves here, especially Grim Reaper. I think Grim Reaper kind of caught on a bit. Raven, toured here quite a bit, as did Saxon. Maybe not the record sales, obviously, but they had a good following here. Tigers of Pantang, Angel Witch, Diamond Head, Demon, Girl School, Praying Mantis, Tank, Tokyo Blade, all those bands should have made it here. I think Diamond Head could have really made it here, but again, they just kind of like exploded, before that really happened. Angel Witch, again, they had the one album, right? Girl School, I mean, geez, they opened up for a lot of prominent bands here. I'm surprised they didn't really catch on, but I think with Girl School, I never thought the music of Girl School was that good. Praying Mantis should have been huge here. Their music was and same thing with Demon. Demon, again, another one. Demon's name had nothing to do with their music. I think Demon's music was very melodic, very accessible. If they would have had a different name, possibly, I think they were just not marketed well enough here, because I think Demon's music could have really caught on here in a big way. Same thing with Praying Mantis. I mean, they were basically like a melodic rock band. Tokyo Blade, I knew a lot of people that were into Tokyo Blade back in the day, but they never made it big, and these two bands, Motorhead and Venom, some people classify as a new wave of British heavy metal band, some don't. I think if you're going to include them in with that group, they kind of are, even though they started a little, they started in the late 70s, right? You kind of could include them, and I mean, both Motorhead and Venom had quite a bit of success. So, but if you're not going to do, if you're not going to include them, and obviously neither one of those hit the levels of Def Leppard or Maiden, right? But yeah, I mean, those two were those are the biggest, obviously, but the others had some success. But yeah, it's just that I think some of the names, some of the fact that maybe some of them didn't tour here often, some of them, didn't stay together long enough. There's a lot of factors there. From Gray Ever, hello. First of all, let me tell you that you are great. Well, thank you, sir. My first question is, do you like 1968 to 73 folk rock albums? If so, what are your favorites? Like I said before, I'm not a huge folk fan, but, some bands I think at the time that I kind of dig a little bit are the Byrds, Strawbs, obviously, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young I like, Buffalo Springfield, that sort of thing. I don't necessarily have any favorite albums. I just, I like their music. I have some hit collections and things like that. Second question. Do you like power pop bands from 77 to 82? Well, you got some very specific years here. Like the Shoes. I never heard the Shoes before, but some other power pop bands that I like that I guess are kind of from that era. Cheap Trick, obviously. Big Star, obviously. The Raspberries, but I think they're a little bit earlier. The Cars, Stars. Some of the Stars stuff is hard rock. Some is kind of power popish. The Knack, I dug quite a bit at the time. Donnie Iris. Not sure if Blondie qualifies, My third question, a lot of questions here, my friend. Can you make your best album list of 1976 to 82 era, including your favorite genres albums? Oh my God, that's too much to do right here, my friend. That, might have to be a totally separate show, but I'm just, why those years? Okay, that's what I'm asking. Obviously, you must really like those years for some reason. From Scott McGregor, sorry, Pete, one last question. 2 Led Zeppelin groove songs. Pick just one. Good Times, Bad Times, or Hot Time for Nowhere? Just pick one. Jesus, they're both really good. I'm going to say Good Times, Bad Times, but tomorrow I might say Hot Time for Nowhere. They're both great. But yeah, Good Times, Bad Times for today. All right, Scott. Oh, Scott's 2 questions from Scott. Another great Q&A show. Thank you. I was always a music geek, but you are the guru. Keep it up. What do you think of the supergroup Animal Logic with Stanley Clarke, Deborah Holland, and Stuart Copeland? I thought they did okay pop stuff, but the individual parts were better than the whole. Yeah, you know what? I was pretty excited when that came out, and I was kind of like, didn't do much for me. Kind of disappointment. I was like, it's okay, I guess. But man, Stanley Clarke, come on. And, Stuart Copeland, I don't know. I just never thought it was very good. Didn't really do much for me. Another question from Scott. If you were going to do a top 10 Neil Morse list, how would you go about it? Would you strictly do just Neil Morse solo songs, or would you include Transatlantic and Spock's Beard? Well, like I said earlier, if I were to do, like, I generally stay away from doing stuff like that. These guys who have been in multiple bands and then do a, you know, like top 10 Mike Portnoy, top 10 Neil Morse. I mean, you know, this is ridiculous. So, well, I actually have on my list to do a Spock's Beard top 10 show. I would love to do a Transatlantic, and if I were to do, I'd do a Neil Morse solo, that sort of thing. I wouldn't just have an all-encompassing, because it's just too much. It would be too hard to do that. And last but not least, well, we finally got to the end of this ridiculously epic show. From Michel, what would be your favorites from among the new wave of traditional metal that is so active today? Night Demon are awesome. Love Night Demon. Visigoth from Salt Lake City. Summerlands are very, very good. Lunar Shadow are excellent. Cauldron, another great band. And Bullet is pretty damn good too. But yeah, those bands, there's so many. A lot of really good young heavy metal bands coming out that are just kind of doing that kind of early 80s metal style, which I really dig quite a bit. But yeah, Night Demon, Visigoth, Summerlands, Lunar Shadow, Cauldron, Bullet. Can't go wrong with any of those. Check them out. Also, check us out on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Of course, we're on the mighty YouTube often. Lots more stuff coming up this week. So check it out. And then I'm going to be checking out for a week on a long business trip to the Washington, D.C. area. So I will be kind of incommunicado for a little bit. So give me some time to rest up from doing all these shows. So you know the drill. Put your questions in the comments, and I'll get to them the next time we record one of these. Will probably be at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 from now. Remember, keep the questions Pete, can you do a show like this? Pete, can you do this show? Pete, can you cover this band? Pete, just try and ask some musical questions here that don't relate to me having to add more to my ridiculous show list. If we can, please, people. Okay? All right? So thanks a lot, and we'll see you again real soon. Take care. Bye-bye.